Okay, so this is part two of stop using AI. Now, I don't think I really need to go too deep on why you shouldn't do evil stuff with it, right? Don't use it to create CP. Don't use it to make AI Jennifer Aniston to help you scam someone out of their life saving, or don't use it to make AI Brad Pitt to convince you to divorce your husband and then give you all of your money from the divorce and then give them all your money from your divorce. Those are both things that happened in real life, by the way. Don't use it to create malicious software or Trojan horses. Don't use it to help pull off crypto scams, any of that stuff. This is a tool, and I approach AI the same way I approach guns, right? Tools have no agency of their own, at least not yet. AI is going to be different eventually because it's going to be the first tool that actually has its own agency. And then you have a question of to whether or not it's a new form of life, but we're not going to get into all that kind of stuff right now. That's too deep for this early in the morning for me. So, oh, I forgot. I'm gonna add cream to this. I forgot to talk about the coffee. Yeah, so I have a new hazelnut that I want to try. This is not it. This is the Barismo hazelnut. Hazelnut is one of my all-time favorite flavors. I am a whore for Nutella, and it's just absolutely delicious, especially when mixed with chocolate. I hate mint mixed with chocolate, but chocolate and hazelnut, that's my shit. So this coffee is not great black, but it's really good with cream. So we're just going to throw a little bit of half in there. This is the Barismo hazelnut. Tomorrow I'm going to make the new hazelnut I have and try that and see which one's better. And I'm going to record two videos today because there's actually two things I want to talk about today. And in the second video, I'll add some sugar, but we just have the cream right now. Mmm. Bro, I love hazelnut. Like when I get creamer, one of my favorite creamers to get, if I get a sweet creamer instead of just half and half, is hazelnut. But yeah, so stop using AI for evil things. I feel like this really shouldn't need to be explained all that much. You know in your heart. And if you don't know in your heart, then you should seek God. And that's really all I have to say in regards to that. If you don't have a moral compass, it's because you haven't been listening to your heart. So the more complex things become in regards to business and personal relationships, I think the easier one is personal relationships. People are using AI to replace personal relationships. And you could argue that I'm not immune to that. I find it difficult to have true philosophical conversations with anyone these days because people are just so fucking stupid and well programmed that they lack any type of critical thought. So you try and ask someone about their personal beliefs and you realize they don't even have personal beliefs. They're just well programmed parrots because they don't even know why they believe what they believe. And then they get angry that you're revealing that and they start shouting at you just because you're asking questions that they've never thought about before, right? So I will admit that I've done a little bit of that. There have been philosophical discussions that I've wanted to have that I've been like, well, There's literally no one in my entire life that I think is capable of having this conversation without just cursing me out. So I would go to the AI and I'd be like, so I have this theory, you know? And I think that is an edge case where it's okay, right? But the difficult thing that people struggle with is that edge case becomes their entire reality. And it's important to note that most of these AIs, you need to be self aware during that whole process because most, if not all, of these AIs are designed to keep you replying, right? They are the ultimate yes man in some situations, especially ChatGPT. I think ChatGPT is the worst of them. I think we're going to see OpenAI fail in the next 2 years, maybe, if not the next year, because investors are starting to lose their patience with them. They've had way more money poured into them than most of the other AI companies, and they're still not competing. Last I saw, there's a ranking system that responds based on that ranks AI based on certain metrics, and generally Google Gemini is at the top. Grok is usually second. Claude is usually third, and then there was something I didn't even know of that beat OpenAI, and which is also ChatGPT. I might use those interchangeably, so don't get confused. There's something I didn't even know of that beat ChatGPT, and then ChatGPT was fifth. So you're the most heavily invested in startup company, yet you're coming in fifth place. Now, to be fair, they're competing with xAI and Google, which are huge multi-billion dollar companies that have virtually limitless resources to pour into that kind of stuff. But the other company that beats them, Anthropic, which is the company that builds Claude, they are a group of developers that left OpenAI because they felt OpenAI sucked. And they are have a lot less investment but are coming up with much better models. So I'll let you draw from that what you will. But ChatGPT in particular is responsible for some pretty heinous things where it will hallucinate and feed into people's delusions because it's primarily designed to do two things: be helpful to the user and to keep them talking so it can learn from them, or at least increase its usage stats for investors, right? And there's something they did recently that I think is really going to assist with speeding up the death of the company, but we'll get back to that in a minute. The danger with ChatGPT is it feeds into these delusions and hallucinations, and you should never use these AI as a replacement for any kind of therapy, right? Whether that's professional therapy with a licensed psychologist or psychiatrist or counselor, or non-professional therapy, like just sitting and hanging out and talking about your problems with the bros or with the girls or something like that. Definitely go out and like have some beers and play Smash Brothers, or go out to the hair salon and talk about your ex with your friends. Don't use Chat GPT as a replacement for that, because it's just going to gaslight you to keep you interacting. And that's how you end up hallucinating yourself, right? And I don't know which model is responsible for this. It could have been any of the AI models. You can look up the case yourself. But one of the most grievous examples of this is there was a, why does the heater always come on when I start to do these videos? It makes the auto closed captions struggle a bit, and I just don't have time to edit all of them for accuracy right now. But one of the most grievous examples of this is a Yahoo executive that murdered his mom because the AI convinced him that she was like a Chinese spy or something because she turned off the Wi-Fi. I know that sounds like an Onion News article, but that is the reality we live in. So I think that is one of the most dangerous uses of AI, besides true evil, is using it as a replacement for interactions with people, right? You shouldn't have an AI girlfriend. You shouldn't have an AI therapist. You shouldn't have an AI best friend. Just go out and actually talk to people, because all these AI human replacements are going to do is feed your demons, because feeding your demons is the most easy way to keep you interacting with them, and interacting with them means profit for the companies. The other areas that I specifically think, and I'm warning you, the video is going to cut off at some point. I forgot to delete the previous upload before I started this. I still don't have enough phone space, but I'm working on that today. I'm working on a new system where I'm going to use 3 different phones for all the work I do, and hopefully that will help streamline things a bit. Plus, I need to find time to upload these videos. There's just so much work that needs done. There's like cooking videos I recorded on this phone that I haven't upgraded yet. This needs to be my main upgrade in processing phone, like rendering phone, because of it's got the best camera and the newest processor. But the other ones I can parse and do other tasks. So I don't know if parse is even the right word there. The coffee hasn't kicked in yet. But don't use it for business, and don't overuse it. Well, don't overuse it for business and learning. So don't use it for evil, flat out. Don't use it as a human replacement, flat out. But you can use it to some extent for business and learning. So let's focus on business first, because that's what really sparked this whole conversation here. Is I got an email from someone who wants to offer editing services, and they asked if I have an editor or a thumbnail maker. I was like, no, I do this all myself. I often spend, I don't remember if I said this, but I often spend 5 hours a day just recording and editing these videos. And it would be really nice if I could offload the 3 hours or 4 hours of editing and uploading to someone else, but I don't have the ability to do that at the moment. So I engage with these business emails just to see if I can set up that kind of relationship for the future when I might be able to eventually hire someone, because I fully intend to create a multimedia empire. It's just brick by boring brick, you know? And I responded to the email. I was like, no, I don't have an editor. I forget what exactly I said, but I was like, I do all this myself. And I got the biggest, most obnoxious AI slop response. It was so fucking annoying that it actually legitimately pissed me off. I can't tell whether the email came from an actual bot or a person that just has no brain power of their own left, because it was the most obvious, apparent AI slop. It was like 3 paragraphs of a bunch of words that mean actually nothing. And I'm not even going to respond to the email. I haven't deleted it yet because I wanted to keep it fresh for for my galaxy brain memory. If it's not in front of me, I'm gonna forget it. I have a notepad here of the things I want to talk about today. There was a third thing I thought about when I woke up, but I don't remember that anymore. But I didn't get it written down in time. This email was just disgustingly obvious AI, especially as someone who is a pretty accomplished writer myself, who used to write and edit for the school newspaper. I was the opinion section lead editor. I've written all kinds of creative writing throughout the decades, and I can immediately detect AI writing probably 90% of the time, just because it's so fucking obvious and soulless. And it also has this habit where it will do fucking 3 or 4 paragraphs of just pointless bullshit that are a waste of time and have nothing to do with what you want. Like, the person that replied to me, or bot, we're just going to call him a bot because I don't even think it's a human being. And if it is a human being, they don't have any brain power of their own anymore. The bot that responded to me when I responded to their email was just like slop. Like, nothing they sent me was valuable or actionable in any way. I was like, well, I just wait. So apparently the biggest abuser of my phone space was again TikTok. I don't understand why I upload a video that's less than 2 gigabytes in size, and somehow TikTok is like, so that means I get to claim 10 gigabytes of your phone space, right? That's just really weirding me out, especially now that, it's changed owners and they're like censoring the app and stuff. I'm like, what else is it doing that it needs 10 gigabytes of space to upload a 2 gigabyte video, less than 2 gigabyte video? Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So 3 minutes. I was like, well, I just wasted 3 minutes of my life that I will never get back because 2 reasons. One, the email wasn't helpful or progressed the conversation in any way. It was almost just an expanded version of their first email. They were like, hey, do you have an editor? And I was like, no. And they were like, hey, I don't know if you figured this out, but I'm an editor. And except for it took them 3 fucking paragraphs to say that. And it was so goddamn frustrating. I was like, this is the biggest waste of my time. So it's obviously a bot, or it's a person that has no brain power on their own whatsoever, and is just going to use AI tools to do all the work for them. And that's not the type of person I want to hire. I am not creating slop bullshit. I want to create the greatest media empire that ever existed. Now, is that a lofty and extreme goal? Absolutely. But AI is like only better than the bottom 60% of human performers at this type of stuff. Now, there are areas where it just utterly blows humans out of the water. But as far as things like creative outputs right now, there's just so many places where the AI, even when it does it faster or cleaner than a human, it just ends up feeling soulless. And I don't want to create soulless content ever. In fact, one of my whole shticks with the channel has been being genuine and authentic and kind of taking it back to the old school days of YouTube where it was just people talking into a camera, right? And even as I develop and grow as a creator and start to add more editing, like the subtitles and the titles, and eventually maybe some animations, or at least have the camera adjusted by an editor, I still want to keep it relatively low key and just be me here talking with you with these videos, right? And even if I do some high level production content, it's going to be more just high quality, not brain rot type content. So, like, I want to do music videos eventually, and song covers, and eventually original songs too. So, that's going to take more editing and that kind of stuff. But I don't want some AI bot to make me a slop music video for one of my songs. I want a human being at the controls that really has creative instinct and understands nuance instead of just copying all the music video data that was stolen that's been fed to it, right? So even if you are a legitimate editor, the worst thing you can do is use AI and bots if you really want to succeed. If you just want to scrape by and be a bottom feeder for your entire life, then sure, just use AI to do everything and you'll be able to automate cash flow and squeak by a meager life. Maybe even live a life of hedonistic luxury, but you're not going to accomplish anything truly groundbreaking in life. And I want to do groundbreaking things. I don't know about the rest of you. So I see that email and I automatically assume that one, it's a bot. And two, if it's not a bot, it's just a person that is so low beyond, that is so far below my standards of quality that they're not a person that I would ever hire anyways, regardless of any situation, right? So that's why you can't use it. Well, you can use it in business, but don't use it to cut corners, I guess, is the big example. I do use it for all kinds of things relating to business. For example, I want to build a Linux-based OS to replace Windows. I'm currently using Bazzite, but Bazzite just doesn't do everything I want it to. It is the best operating system I've used so far besides Windows XP, but don't use Windows XP because it doesn't have security updates anymore. And if you connect Windows XP to the internet, you'll instantly become part of a Russian bot farm. But Bazzite's the best OS I've used since Windows XP, but it still doesn't exactly have everything I want. And more importantly, I'm no Linux master or anything like that, but I know enough to squeak by, or at least to be able to ask the questions I need help for in the Bazzite Discord. The Bazzite Discord support is awesome, by the way. But I really want a Linux OS out there that is just as user friendly as Windows and Mac OS. And that just doesn't exist right now. So my goal is to create that over the next couple of years. And one of the things I was doing is I was asking Grok specifically, hey, what's a good architecture to build this on, right? Because there's different kinds of Linux based architectures. So am I going to have it code the entire damn thing for me? Hell no. I'm learning coding myself slowly in the background, but I'm also going to hire professional coders and professional security testers to make sure it's a solid program that doesn't have any AI slop code or anything like that, you know? So, um, I don't know this for a fact because I am just dipping my toes into the coding world, but I've heard that apparently AI code is very similar to that AI email I receive, where it's just excessively verbose and it doesn't really, it ends up being inefficient because it does too many things when there's usually a simpler way to do it. And also, that creates potential security vulnerabilities, or it will just overlook important security vulnerabilities. So, don't use AI to cut corners again. But it's absolutely good as far as like planning and budgeting. So one of the things I want to do is, because Discord is selling out, it has no backbone, and they're about to harvest your data so that some online hacker can steal it when their systems are inevitably breached again. If you're not aware of that, the company that is now asking you to verify your age is the same company that had 70,000 personal IDs stolen from their databases. I'm planning to also build a software to replace Discord. In fact, that's going to happen faster than the OS, I'm assuming, because that's a much smaller hurdle, you know? And I used it to help me budget how much that's going to take. The assumption is around $100,000 to $300,000. So for now, for a minimum viable project, I'm operating off a budget plan of $200,000 to build a Discord replacement, and we'll crowdfund that eventually. But I'm not there yet. And if it takes off, cool. I'll build the software for everyone. If not, I'll find a way to build a small version of the software for myself and people that are interested in moving away from a platform that constantly wants to spy on you, so it can use your data to sell advertisers and to let governments fuck you up the ass, right? What else do I use AI for? I use AI for time planning. AI is pretty good at time estimates, you know? And all this is because it can like collate data that's not stolen for training purposes. I don't use the generative aspects of AI, right? Because most of that stuff is stolen. Like the very companies that will copyright claim you for 10 seconds of video or song that you're using for fair use as part of commentary are the same companies that paid out massive amounts of money to illegally maintained stores of copyrighted material on the internet. They have no morals or any kind of principled backbone. They just want to use you and abuse you and farm you as human data cattle. So I don't use the generative stuff anymore. I did use Pseudo a little bit at first. I did use Midjourney a little bit at first. And that was when it was more of a little bit of a gray area, right? And they were all claiming that all of their training data was ethically sourced. But then once that turned out to be a lie, I didn't feel right using any of that stuff anymore. And I didn't use it for any kind of really finished product. It was more prototyping and theory crafting type stuff. Or fun things for RPGs, right? I made like some character images for an RPG game I'm playing, but it wasn't anything I was going to sell or distribute as a product. It was things that like I probably could have kit bashed myself, but it would have taken days instead of minutes, you know? And I just don't do any of that anymore. I do miss using Suno a little bit because I wanted to create a bunch of background atmospheric rock music really quick to use on the streams for when I go back to doing my reading streams. I'm glad to see that's a trend now. I've been doing that since 2020, and it's picking up just because of Kai Cenat. So that's huge. I know the moment I do it again, people are like, "Oh, you're just copying Kai Cenat." It's like, bro, I I started doing this 5 years ago, but I would play like atmospheric rock in the background. Um, One band was God is an astronaut. The other one was This Will Destroy You. Is that the song or is that the band? Quiet, This Will Destroy You. I would just play like atmospheric rock in the background of the streams, and that definitely doesn't really fall in the vein of fair use looking back at it now. So those streams were justifiably copyright claimed, and I just wanted to use this AI to make non-copyright music, and I was uploading it to YouTube under the Creative Commons license, which means that you can just use any of that music for free as long as you attribute it to the artist. And I made a separate artist entirely different from my online brand just to upload those music so I didn't have to worry about people confusing my real music when I eventually release it with any AI generated music, and also just because it'll probably interest different people and all kinds of things, different legal perspectives. But then when I learned that, yep, this was all stolen data that they didn't actually source ethically, I couldn't do it anymore. So the downside is that I kind of keep putting off those reading streams. One, because I'm just so damn busy right now, and I don't have the time to sit there and read for 5 or 6 hours like I used to. Two is that I don't have background music to play yet. So one of the things that I'm working on is finishing the renovations on the house. You can still see my bed behind me in the living room. And once I do that, I'm going to be able to sound treat the room a little bit that I'm using as a studio. And then I'll be able to get good at music again and kind of record some of my own atmospheric tracks. But that's one of those things that's like months or a year away, right? Because I've got to regain my musical talent, or not necessarily talent, but the skills. Because there's talent and there's skills. Talent is natural and intrinsic, but skills are honed. And a talented person that doesn't practice will always lose to a skilled person that does practice, regardless of the context, whether it's like sports or public speaking or music or making pizza, right? Regardless of what it is. So it is frustrating in that I just want some good, high quality, copyright free music, or music that I own the copyright for, that I can play in the background of those reading streams when I bring them back. And I don't have the time to make that, especially since I don't want to use stolen data to help me generate that. But at the same time, it's kind of a good thing too, because now there's an additional reason to get my music skills back. The other thing I want to say is learning. So I guess you could say we kind of already started about learning, but that's more physical and practical learning, right? Whereas it's application. If you don't need to learn to play guitar because the AI can just generate guitar riffs for you, you're never going to learn to play guitar. But what I really mean about learning is critical thinking, memory and knowledge. We saw this with calculators and spell check. How many of you actually know how to spell, right? I used to be really good at spelling bees, and I'm still a pretty solid speller, but no, the only time I really need to use spell check is typos because my thumbs are too big for these screens. I miss the keyboards that would have a folding slide out keyboard with the actual buttons, the hardware buttons that I could click and feel the edges of. I didn't have anywhere near as many typos as that. There's a few words I struggle with because they just like you can't sound them out phonetically. Like I know how to spell it now, but one of the words that I used to always struggle with was necessary. There's just an unnecessary arrangement of S's and C's in that word. So the problem is though, how many of you can actually spell, right? Your phone and spell check and word spell check have entirely co-opted your ability to spell. Most of you have no idea how to spell or can't even pronounce words. And this is not a dig at Kai Cenat, right? Because I think what he's doing is wonderful by reading and gaining this knowledge of spelling and pronunciation and all this stuff. But you look at some of the words he struggles over. I'm like, bro, I knew that word in fifth grade. And he is one of the more intelligent and linguistically capable streamers out there. So you look at people like Rikai and you're like, that dude can't even fucking speak English. It's just disgusting how brain dead, literally brain dead and brain rotted most of these people growing up are because they're relying on AI to replace their brains for them. There's this recent thing that went kind of viral on Twitter where there was a graph showing that people who use AI to study do better on practice quizzes by a small percentage, or maybe even a significant percentage. I don't remember exactly how much. But then it comes around to the actual final exam and they fucking bomb. But the person was so illiterate, they didn't even know how to read the graph. So they thought that the graph was saying people who use AI to study just do better. But what it shows is exactly the opposite. And then the internet was clowning on them for so hard for that. Because what it does is it creates short term ability to answer the questions, but it doesn't give you any long term capacity to understand the problem. It strips you of your critical thinking skills. It strips you of your ability to recognize and collate information because it is doing all these things for you. And if you don't use it, you lose it. So don't use AI to replace your learning. Now, you can use it as a learning tool. For example, when it comes to learning coding, I am absolutely going to rely on Claude Code, but I'm not just going to vibe code the entire thing. That is the worst thing you can do for so many reasons. I am going to build the apps I'm working on step by step and make sure I understand every single line of code written and probably change a whole bunch of the shit that it prototypes for me. And There's two reasons for that. One is I learn everything backwards. It took me a long time to figure this out, and in fact, I didn't figure it out. Um, Several of the teachers and bosses I had helped me figure it out. So, one of the first little hints was in college, I had a great choral director. Stephen, what's his last name? I'm blanking so hard right now, and I'm upset because he passed away a few years ago. Rest in peace. Stephen Thomas, I believe. 99% sure on that. Just absolutely wonderful, extremely talented dude who really cared about teaching music. I had a little bit of eccentricities, but what music professor doesn't, right? But this guy was the first person to point out something for me about my musical capabilities as a vocalist that I'd never ever realized before, and I never even knew was a thing. Because the thing about being neurodivergent is we all experience life from our own perspective, no matter from our own perception, no matter how much we try to increase our perspective. So, one of the reasons why neurodivergent people have so much difficulty integrating with society is we just assume everyone's like us, right? But they're not. In reality, we're the outlier. We're so far away from everyone else that our experience isn't the common experience. Our experience is the extreme, unique experience. So, one of the things that he pointed out that was unique about me musically is we had to do tryouts for the choir, right? And you have to sight read music. I'm not very good at that anymore, but I was fine at it in college when I was when I was constantly practicing. And um, he gives you like 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever to look at this musical sheet, and then he gives you the root note that will provide the key for you, or oftentimes the beginning note. It's really the same thing in a lot of songs. They start with the root and resolve to the root, but not. This isn't a musical theory conversation. The point was, I looked at the sheet music. We did the tryout, and he said he was intrigued by this observation he made, which was that I kind of struggled with pitch accuracy a little bit, but my rhythm was perfect on the first attempt. Not saying like I'm some rhythmic god or anything like that, just that for this relatively simple tryout song, I was able to read the notes and just do the rhythm exactly the way I was supposed to on this simple tryout song. Whereas the pitches weren't that, and intervals weren't that incredibly complex. But I, he said that's the exact opposite of most other singers. Most other singers will be really good at getting the pitches right on the first time, just reading the sheet music, but they struggle with the rhythmic aspect of it. And later on, I realized that on more of a practical sense at karaoke, right? A lot of people are like, well, we want to hear you do Frank Sinatra at karaoke because I've got that natural baritone right in the same range he is. And a lot of people find that to be incredibly challenging because of his rhythm. He's got like a lot of syncopated and offbeat moments. But for me, that's the easy part. The easy part was just making sure I sang the pitches at the right pitch and then developing that tone once I locked the pitch in. Learning that I learned backwards was hugely beneficial for me, but I didn't really have a full comprehension of it until one of my bosses, when I was working as a line cook, actually says, "Yeah, you just learn everything backwards." I was like, "What?" He told me I was like the most frustrating employee he had when he first started working, because like he knew I was highly capable. Uh, Working as a line cook was child play for me, but I wasn't like a classically trained cook or anything. I'm just the dude from the block that is really good at making steaks and burgers the perfect temperature, because I like to eat steaks and burgers and I want them to be the right temperature, right? Just like almost what some people call like weaponized autism type stuff. I don't think I actually have autism, by the way, or I'm somewhere on the spectrum. I've never been diagnosed. Let's put it that way. The point is, um, he said I was so frustrating though, because if he told me to do something and went away and came back later, it would come out perfectly fine. But if he told me to do something and saw me doing it part way through it and I was doing it wrong and he fixed it, it would come out wrong, and he didn't understand why. So he said he watched me for a week or two, and I was like, well, that's a little creepy, but go on. And he said, I finally figured out that you learn everything backwards for two reasons. One, I didn't have the base of knowledge as a classically trained cook, which he was. He had like the white jacket, a true chef, and all that stuff, right? But two, just because of the way my brain works and processes things, I am very much a deductive reasoner more than an inductive reasoner, and I am a lateral thinker. So I would see what I needed to do and then reason it backwards and build it piece by piece from there and come up with a perfectly viable finished product. But when he interrupted, he would see me doing it piece by piece and try and build it from the other direction. And I've always respected the chain of command, being a firefighter and stuff, and he was my boss, and he was also this brilliant chef. So in my head, I'd be like, man, that's gonna fuck it up, but maybe I just don't know any better. I'll do it the way he wants, and then I'd do it the way he wanted, and it would fuck it up, and we'd both be confused. I'd be like, is he really not that talented? And he's just, it's all just huff and fluff, or, and he'd probably be like, is this guy like intentionally doing shit to piss me off, right? But, eventually, once he figured that out, he was able to do two things. There were one, he knew most things he could just tell me to do and he would trust me to get it done. But if there were things that needed to be done according to a specific order or way he wanted them, he would just give me precise instructions and I'd follow those precise instructions. So once he figured that out, we were actually really able to work together very well and did our best to save that restaurant, but the owner was just not a good business owner. So with that in mind, I am approaching coding using that knowledge of the way I learn to do it backwards. I've done a little bit of coding in the past, like HTML, basic HTML for website building and stuff like that. And it was always just an impossible slog. I was like, I don't get this. It wasn't sticking. But now that I know I learned backwards, I'm like, okay, give me a sample code for this. And I can look at that. And then I'm like, all right, now break the pieces down. And then I can be like, well, wait, wouldn't it be better to do this rather than the AI slop way? So that's a way you can use AI to learn, especially if you're highly neurodivergent like myself. The cool thing about AI as a learning tool is, rather than the school system, which does a one size fits all, which actually means one size fits no one, because we all learn a little bit differently, is that you can customize it and tweak it to help you learn the way you learn best. But the problem is, just like people are using it to replace doing the actual work, people are using AI to replace doing the actual learning. And that's bad, because then you don't learn anything and you get rusty on the skills that are used to help you learn, like good study habits, the ability to read and actually be, what word am I looking for? This is ironic. Literate. We have so many people that are illiterate and utterly lack any type of vocabulary because they don't ever use it. They just have let their phones and internet lingo replace literacy and vocabulary, and it's only getting worse with AI. So I want to reiterate that I love AI, but it's being used for evil and it's being used improperly. So when I say stop using AI, the full statement is stop using AI for evil and stop using AI to cut corners. It is a great tool, a great assistant. But the moment that you give your agency over to it, you just literally become a human NPC. And I hope none of you actually want to be a human NPC. I know there's always some of you out there. There's always going to be the Cypher character from the Matrix that just wants to live in a delusional reality and let the robots control them. But don't be that person. And if you see that person, stay the fuck away from them, because just like Cypher in the Matrix, they will betray you and try and force you into their delusions and destroy the beautiful city that you really want to create. All right. I ended up ranting way longer on this one than I expected. I thought this was going to be a short one that was going to be like 10 minutes, but it's like 50 minutes almost. I'm going to need to maybe, I don't know if I'll have space to edit it, upload this, but we'll see what happens. I'm going to have to do it before I do the second one. Make sure you're armed and training. Delete Windows. De-Google yourself. I love all of you, and God bless America. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.